EE was born just 1 month ago. She's about to undergo open heart surgery.
当时孩子得了这个先天性心脏病的话，我们全家人都懵了，以为孩子没救了。他说这个孩子在3个月里面，这个手术必须要完成。
Between 6 and 8 out of 1,000 newborn babies have congenital heart diseases, and the majority of them need operations to correct their malformations. The two major arteries in EE's heart that are supposed to grow in the right and left ventricles are growing only in the right. The doctors will operate to correct this error.
这个肺动脉扩张还是蛮厉害，小孩肺动脉的那个压力应该还是蛮高的。那主动脉弓是正常的，一个小的动脉导管，其他的气管也是正常的。
Next, they will sew 30 evenly spaced stitches on EE's tiny 9mm diameter vessels.
"基本上就头发是那么细的针。如果我们最复杂的手术算100分的话，它基本上可以达到90分左右。
6 hours later, the doctor stitches the misplaced vessels in EE's heart into the correct position. The operation has changed EE's life.
所有的先天性心脏病应该说都是可以治疗的。我们现在就是心脏跟正常人结构完全纠正的一模一样，那我们称为解剖性的纠治。
Today, treating a complex heart abnormality is a relatively easy job for a doctor. But just 70 years ago, heart surgery had never been performed. The speed of development in this field has been astonishing. Cardiac surgery is the most recently developed of all surgical fields. But just how difficult is it to operate on the heart? Let's take a closer look at this most mysterious of organs. The University of Minnesota is the site of the world's first open heart surgery. It's one of the most important experimental bases for basic heart science research.
So this is the Visible Heart Lab at University of Minnesota, and like you saw, we did the in situ work on the animal, used a high potassium cardioplegia, stopped the heart within seconds, cut it out, cannulated it, and now it's beating here, which is really amazing.
This is the heart of a pig. Scientists can reactivate it through electrical stimulation to see how it works. In terms of function, structure, and size, the heart of a pig is the most similar in nature to a human heart.
Awesome. Good. So this is one of our video scopes. And as I advance it in now, you can look at monitor 2. And on monitor 2, now I'm visualizing the heart. There it is. Now I'm looking at myocardial tissue. And as I work it around, I'll articulate it. And you can actually see there's a tricuspid valve. I can keep advancing the scope all the way down into the heart, and now I'm inside the right ventricle. And in the right ventricle, I can see the anterior papillary muscle
The valves open and close to ensure that the blood only flows in one direction. The sound made by the valves opening and closing is what we hear as a heartbeat. A beating heart is like a well-designed and highly efficient pumping mechanism. It beats at 70 times per minute, pumping 5 litres of blood through 96,000 kilometres of blood vessels. The rhythmic beating of the heart is a symbol of life, but for surgeons, it was once an insurmountable obstacle.
New Year's Eve, 1899 was an exciting time. A stroke of 12 would herald not just a new year, but a whole new, with each adding his own special skill. This was the assembly line method of production. It built thousands of cars. It lowered the price of them.
By the end of the 19th century, surgery was going through its first golden age of development. Surgeons had taken the scalpel to the limbs, abdomen, and even the brain. But they were much more cautious about taking it to the heart. In many surgical practices, doctors have 2 preconditions for surgery. The organ being operated on must be still, and the surgical field must be clear and bloodless. These 2 conditions are necessary for surgeons to be able to think calmly and take their time to operate. But operating on the heart goes directly against these 2 principles.
因为你心脏停跳之后，你这个人体的氧的交换就停止了，血液动力学就停止了，所以氧的交换也停止了，这样带来的整个人的这种生命的活动就无法去维系。
The breakthrough came thanks to a Canadian doctor named Wilfred Bigelow. Bigelow performed a series of cryogenic anesthesia experiments on animals, and he found that when the body temperature dropped, the body needed less oxygen in the blood. This would, in turn, cause blood flow to slow down and possibly bring about a brief cardiac arrest. During this time, the surgeon could open the heart and perform surgery, but only for a maximum of 6 minutes. Bigelow's technique was soon applied to heart surgery. Professor Ding Wenqiang is one of the first doctors to perform heart surgery in China. He clearly remembers the scene when he opened up the heart using cryogenic methods.
敲病敲好之后，摆在那个洗澡盆里面，看温度降到多少了，那么出水。麻醉医生手里面有个上海牌的那个赛跑的那个码表，就说把血阻断了，他就开始报了，1分、2分。3分就这样报，你就晓得已经过了3分钟了。等到过5分钟，心里就慌了，看看还来得及吧，赶快做。这样呢，就几分钟呢，也只能做非常简单的手术。
After a series of unsuccessful operations, everyone realized that if surgeons did not have enough time to operate, cardiac surgery would stay at a very preliminary stage. Breaking through this time limit became the main problem for doctors. In March 2017, 62-year-old Sun Feng returned to Beijing. It was here, 15 years earlier, that he had escaped the jaws of death. In early 2002, Sun Feng was diagnosed with aortic dissection, a rare and deadly condition.
做完核磁就做出来是主动脉夹层瘤。做完之后就问哪的说是拉过去吧，哪块都不能治，就准备后事吧。
The aorta blood vessel connected to Suan Feng's heart has undergone a pathological change. The flowing blood continuously strikes the blood vessel wall, making it thinner and thinner. Once the blood vessel wall breaks, Suan Feng will die of a massive hemorrhage in a matter of minutes. The only way to cure him is to directly replace the aortic vessel with an artificial blood vessel.
都开花了。
是吃了这么长时间都不知道了。光看他们微信。
快1个月了。
哎呀，你好好再活的15年，就可以手术完整了。
15年都不活。当时第一次手术完，寻思也不知道维持多长时间就完，是吧？这回都15年了，这回回来又复查，又发现有新的病变，还得做。
The operation has begun. Just as a plumber has to close the sluice before changing a water pipe, doctors have to completely stop Suan Feng's source of blood to the blood vessels, his heart. The blood that should be flowing through Suan Feng's heart is piped into a machine next to the operating table. The machine takes over all the work that the heart should be doing.
"这个过程呢，就是从这个过去传统意义上来说，没有呼吸、没有心跳了，那这个人就等于是死了。其实没有，他所有的脏器都是在我们的保护之下。
This is an artificial heart-lung machine. It's one of the most important inventions in cardiac surgery. It gives today's doctors plenty of time to operate on the heart and even allows them to replace the aortic vessels directly connected to the heart in the case of patients with severe diseases like Suan Feng. Over 70 years ago, in a bid to break through the 6-minute time limit for heart surgery, doctors had already tried to design a similar machine, but their attempts proved fruitless. People began to question the idea of having another device do the work of the heart. Some doubted that heart surgery would ever be possible at all. But in those days of opportunity and adventure, an idea initially dismissed as fanciful brought a glimmer of hope. Wayne Miller is a writer. He spent 7 years writing the biographical work King of Hearts, something he takes special pride in. The book is about the legendary Clarence Walton Lillehei, an American who pioneered open heart surgery.
This is the story of a quest that some considered impossible and others called murderous. Most of it occurred in the 1950s and early 1960s, when jet jockeys piloted the first rocket ships into space. The best of the open heart pioneers shared much with the early astronauts. These young doctors had returned from war with ambition. They believed in breaking rules in both their personal and professional lives.
Today, Miller is visiting an old friend who played a major role in Lillehei's amazing life.
What number is it?
255.
255. It's right there.
This one.
Right here.
Hello.
Mike.
Wow.
Hey.
Nice to see you after.
How are you? After
how many years?
Almost 20 years.
About 20. Oh my God.
73-year-old Mike Shaw lives in a small town in Minnesota, and he's one of the area's best-known rock musicians.
Hello.
Delighted to meet you. Oh, it's cool in here, too.
Well, it was hot and then cold. Oh, the weather kept changing here today.
I dug through my archives. I have so many things, and I did my best to pull out. I did find your file, but I could have more documentation on it. I just don't know, but I'm hoping that you can.
Shaw had dreamed of becoming a rock musician since childhood, but at the age of just 10, that dream almost came to an abrupt end. In 1954, Shaw was diagnosed with a severe congenital heart malformation. He was taken to the hospital where Lillahai worked.
My mother was definitely always, you could always see it in her face. She was kind of that worried type look. And I learned what that was from years ago after that. She always had some thing about her when she was worried. She would fiddle around with her fingers or it'd chew her tongue or things like that. And I think about back when I was a kid. She did that a lot.
At that time, the field was still limited to 6-minute hypothermia surgery, and attempts to develop the artificial heart-lung machine had not been successful. No doctor was willing to operate on a 10-year-old child. All Shaw could do was wait for death.
So Walt wanted to go in a different direction. Didn't want a very complicated machine. He came up with the idea that if you could have a patient and you could have a donor and use the donor's blood supply to circulate through the patient, you could close off that patient's heart and you could operate on it.
The University of Minnesota was at the time at the forefront of heart research around the world. The university's Archive Center still keeps a complete record of the successful and unsuccessful attempts of that period. Even today, the different direction Lillahai took is still astonishing.
This, however, is an actual photograph of one of the surgeries, one of the early surgeries using the cross-circulation method. First, over here on the upper left, we see a portion of the donor who is providing the oxygenated blood for the patient. We can just see a small glimpse, the tube coming out of the patient's leg, which is where they would draw the blood from, is coming behind them into, we can see part of the pump machine behind him.
The idea seemed insane, to have a patient's blood flow into a healthy donor's heart, be processed, and then flow back into the body of the patient. Meanwhile, the patient's heart would stop. Lillahai called it the living cross-circulation technique. This fearless doctor was prepared to stake his professional career on this new method.
The past 15 years, tremendous advances have been made in cardiac surgery.
The pump is interposed between the donor's circulation and the patient's circulation. The oxygenated source of blood from the patient is pumped through the pump, out this limb of the tubing into the arterial circulation of the patient. The patient's used venous blood is returned through this tube, through the pump, and back into the donor's circulation for reoxygenation and recirculation.
The use of living donors was highly controversial. But for the desperate parents of patients, it gave a glimmer of hope. In 1954, with the support of the patient's relatives, Lillehei's idea was first used on humans, and it was a success. However, Shaw's blood type was so special that his parents could not be his donors. Fortunately, a volunteer named Howard Holtz came forward.
I do remember some things that right the day before surgery. I remember my mother had a priest come in and give me the last rites. I had no idea what that was about. In the Catholic Church, they have a priest come in and do last rites to be safe about when you die.
On the left, Lillehei operated on the sick child, Michael Shaw.
An operation that will change Shaw's life begins. The blood vessels of Shaw and Holtz are connected. After Holtz's heart takes over, Lillehei opens Shaw's heart. Lillehei sees Shaw's life-threatening heart defect and starts to repair it without any time pressure.
The Lord looks after you to do things for you in your future. I'm guessing it's just how things work out.
Many people said that the biggest risk of this method was that both patient and donor could die. But the operation turned out to be a complete success.
I think the beauty of cross-circulation is it really proved that congenital heart surgery could be done successfully. With all the technology evolving at the same time, they had reasonable results.
I didn't quite understand it to that depth because it does essentially one thing, and that is to pump blood. Oh, I know that.
In 1954, a total of 45 patients on the verge of death underwent Lillehei's living cross-circulation surgery. Shaw was one of the 28 who survived.
I'm so worried. Before I was worried because you couldn't do anything. Now I'm worried.
Don't have to worry about any cameras. Do whatever you. It's just casual, and they're going to shoot pot shots around. This is my son Trent and his wife Rachel.
Oh my goodness.
And his son William. It's my granddaughter Vanessa Olson and Gregory Olson.
He smelled slightly modified.
I basically have done everything I wanted to do in my life, and with good health, and had a family and home. Everything that I ever wanted to do, I've got to do.
If it had not been for Walt Lillehei, if it had not been for a stranger with a kind heart, if it had not been for young Mike Shaw to find Dr. Lillehei, for him to be doing that surgery at that time, his children, his grandchildren would not be here today. None of the people that we saw would be here today.
Lillehei's living cross-circulation technique proved that it was possible to use another device to replace the heart during surgery. His breakthrough brought new hope into the study of cardiac surgery. In 1958, the artificial heart-lung machine was officially developed and went into wide use in clinical practice. A major breakthrough had been made in cardiac surgery. It is without doubt one of the greatest inventions of mankind. It gives millions of patients with severe heart disease the chance to get cured.
不让我喝水。
谁不让你喝水啊？
他们带。
该喝水喝水，
昨天到现在，才喝了1瓶半水没喝水。
你该喝水喝水，那干成这样不喝水，那能咽下去饭吗？
就是，谢谢你啊，这个都不喝水。
Countless patients like Sun Feng have benefited from it. It was a victory for both doctors and patients.
Does anyone know what it is? Any guesses? You have a robot on you right now? That is an amazing electrical machine. There's one other one in your body. Heart? Yes, heart. So, everyone's heart beats because of electricity. So you probably all heard a heartbeat, kind of goes lub-dub, lub-dub. Well, each lub and each dub is actually a tiny electrical shock that's going beat now, beat now, beat now. And that beat allows us to walk around and be the person we are.
Advances in cardiac surgery have also opened up our understanding of the heart.
Like any other electrical machine, sometimes the electricity...
It was discovered that the heart is actually a mass of powerful muscles. Special cells in this organ cause it to beat day and night. These are pacemaker cells. They start beating in a 3-week-old embryo before the heart has even taken shape. Pacemaker cells generate precisely ordered electric waves in the heart muscles. As they regulate the contractions of the heart begins to beat rhythmically. If the beats lose their order, the electric stimulation will return them to their proper rhythm.
Region of the heart you should be. That's it a little bit. You're not through the introducer wing. There. There we go.
Yeah, it's not going to go that smooth.
At this heart research laboratory, engineers are trying to fit a capsule-sized object into a test animal's heart. This is a Micra, the smallest pacemaker in the world.
If you look closely, you can see that the pacemaker is inside a cup here, and it is when it's deployed, these tines come out and grab the heart wall. And it's a very strong and very stable fixation. And then once the Micra is deployed, it's sitting in the heart just like this.
Oh, we can just keep going for a while there.
By releasing an electrical current, the electronic implant stimulates the weakened heart to make it beat normally. Today, the heart is aided by electronic implants more than any other organ. The heart can be made to beat through electrical stimulation, but as the source of human blood vessels, its structure also provides a different option for heart surgery. Fuwai Hospital, attached to the Chinese Academy of Medical Sciences, is the largest cardiovascular disease treatment center in the world. Every day, thousands of heart disease patients come here to seek treatment. Unprecedented breakthroughs in how heart operations are carried out today have made it easier to deal with the wide variety of complex heart diseases. Dr. Fang Pihua begins his first operation of the day. He deftly inserts a long, thin wire into the patient's vein. Guided by X-rays, he adjusts the angle until it precisely reaches the diseased position inside the patient's heart. Here, some cardiac muscle cells are being discharged abnormally, causing the patient to suffer pain in his heart. If left untreated, it will eventually lead to cardiovascular infarction. When a hidden balloon at the end of the wire opens, nitrous oxide at -80 degrees Celsius is instantly injected, and the discharging cardiac muscle cells instantly undergo cryoablation. The patient's heart then returns to normal. Today, highly advanced medical devices allow doctors to enter and treat patients' bodies in increasingly innovative ways. General anesthesia is no longer needed. Moreover, this kind of treatment won't cause extensive injuries to the patient. After the artificial heart-lung machine, interventional treatment was the second milestone invention in cardiac treatment. Just as Lillehei pioneered living cross-circulation, the beginning of interventional technology also started with what seemed to be a reckless venture.
Das ist das Anna-Stift, also eine Stiftung, die für kranke Menschen da ist.
80-year-old professor of medicine George Forsman remembers his father Werner Forsman as an ordinary urologist. His parents both worked in a small clinic far from the city, leaving home early and coming back late every day. It never occurred to him or his family that his father would one day win the Nobel Prize.
Am 17. Oktober 1956 kam plötzlich ein Herr zu uns zu Besuch und hat gesagt, morgen gibt es ein großes Ereignis. Und dann sind wir am nächsten Tag in der Schule gewesen und plötzlich haben die im Radio durchgegeben, dass Werner Forsman kriegt den Nobelpreis. Da hat der Direktor der Schule gesagt, hat uns gerufen und wir durften alle nach Hause gehen.
It all started with an experiment he had done when he was a young man, one that no one had done before or since. In 1929, 25-year-old Werner Forsman read in a paper that someone had conducted an experiment on a horse in which thin tubes were inserted through the veins into the heart. He immediately decided to try this on humans, as it could prove to be a safe way of injecting drugs into the heart. Eberswald is a small city in the German state of Brandenburg. It was here on a summer's day in 1929 that the young Forsman started his daring experiment. Forsman used a scalpel to cut open one of his own veins and then inserted a catheter into it. Using X-ray to guide him, he slowly pushed the catheter toward his heart. No one had ever done it before, or even thought of the idea. As a doctor, Forsman was well aware of the dangers of what he was doing. While passing through his body, the catheter could cause bleeding and threaten his life.
Also er hat mir gesagt, er hat nie Angst gehabt davor, dass was passieren kann, weil er sich den Zustand der Blutgefäße und des Herzens erstens bei Menschen an den Leichen angesehen hat und hat gesagt, was soll da passieren, wenn man durch ein Rohr einen Katheter schiebt. Das Zweite war, er hat auch in der Urologie gearbeitet und kannte daher die Verwendung des Katheters. Und drittens war er durch seine Kenntnisse in der Anatomie auch initiiert.
This is the first image of a cardiac catheter in human history. Werner Forssmann conducted the same procedure on himself 9 times, but when he made the results public, his daring experiment was condemned at the time as reckless and dangerous. In the face of this harsh criticism, he abandoned cardiology for urology.
Und das hier ist ein Bild, als wir nach dem Krieg sind wir ja zuerst im Schwarzwald gewesen bis 1950 und von dort ist er umgezogen und hat eine Praxis und ein Krankenhaus, die Leitung einer Abteilung für Urologie gehabt. Also eine Praxis, nicht ein Krankenhaus, also eine Praxis. Das waren größere Räume mit Operationstisch und Büro und dort hat er die Patienten, ich glaube, die ist nach dem Nobelpreis gemacht worden. Ja.
After that experiment, Forssmann never did any further research on cardiology. His actions were way ahead of his time, and they had a devastating impact on his career. For the rest of his life, Forssmann worked as an ordinary urologist. It was only 27 years later that people began to realize the importance of cardiac catheterization. In 1956, at the age of 52, Forssmann won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. No one knows if this belated honor was enough to console the pioneering physician.
我们目前的所有的新秀经过介入的诊断跟介入的治疗，都是建立在我们说心血管，都是建立在他最早的这个操作的基础上。他应该开创了一个介入的时代。
介入技术的发展，使得过去传统的只有通过开心手术才能完成的很多手术得以实现。这个技术本身最终让患者得以受益，同时也促进了心脏外科不能够严守过去的老套路，走那种创伤大的技术，所以促使了心脏外科朝着越来越微创化的方向的发展。
The development of cardiac surgery technology has allowed doctors today to solve a variety of heart problems with ease. However, problems related to this vital organ are still the #1 threat to human life. %30 of the world's deaths are caused by cardiovascular diseases. Exploration into ways to treat complex heart diseases continues. In Hong Kong, every August is the rainy season. Typhoon Hato, a Force 10 tropical cyclone, has just passed through. 21-year-old Ye Peiling lives in Chuanshan, Kowloon. Every month, he makes a trip across half of Hong Kong Island to Queen Mary Hospital.
我需要首先由屋企呢一度啦，行過去小巴站嘅。行到去小巴站，我需要搭到小巴落去地鐵站啦。之後我都唔敢去上企滿晒嘅車，因為都會怕可能有啲人落車啊，太過逼嘅時候就會扯到我嘅生命線啊，或者整到我部機啊。所以通常我都會可能揀空啲嘅車啊，或者有位坐嘅時候，我都會盡量揀一個空位去坐咯。
Palin is very careful about protecting the backpack he carries. The device in his bag is his very source of life.
當我入到醫院嘅時候，佢哋就已經確診咗我係有心臟衰竭啦。當時我已經係冇力可以行啦，甚至要瞓喺張床嗰度嘅。
Genetic cardiac hypertrophy prevents his heart from pumping enough blood. This will eventually lead to heart failure. Although Ye was put on a waiting list for a heart transplant, doctors decided to give him an artificial heart in January 2016 to keep him going until the day of the operation. This is the smallest artificial heart in the world. Inside it has a special metal impeller. The impeller is driven by electricity and rotates to pump blood throughout the body. This seemingly simple device is actually the culmination of the painstaking efforts of several generations of scientists. Young Palin is a lucky man. All his physical indicators easily meet the stringent standards needed for the artificial heart to be viable for him. Two years after the operation, he still has to make regular visits to the hospital for strict re-examinations. One end of the wire is connected to the artificial heart and the other to a battery pack that provides power. In order to avoid infection of the surgical wound, Palin not only needs to get regular re-examinations, but must also clean the wound under the strict supervision and guidance of doctors every time he comes here. Palin is happy to hear that the results of the examination are positive. Although it's not very convenient to carry and has to be recharged every night, this small device allows his young life to continue. Today, while working as a volunteer at school, he hopefully awaits a heart transplant.
因為我完全冇諗過，其實我20歲左右嘅年齡，我要去面對一個咁樣嘅病啦。我唔知道我仲有幾多年嘅壽命啦，我唔知道我可以再生存幾耐。當我去接受到呢啲嘅幫助嘅時候咧，我都會感激啦。所以我而家做緊嘅工作，我都係去喺學校入面啦，我去了解呢啲嘅學生啦，用翻我嘅經驗啦，用翻我所經歷嘅嘢啦，可以去同佢哋一齊玩啊，去關心佢哋，去令到佢哋唔會灰心啦，甚至令佢哋更加堅強。
The annual Global Heroes Race is the world's largest and most famous sports event for people with chronic diseases. These competitors have various medical devices implanted in their bodies. Advances in medical technology have made long-distance running possible for people who once suffered from heart disease. By courageously overcoming their physical challenges, they promote the idea of healthy living. Advances like the artificial heart-lung machine, interventional technology, and artificial hearts are all the result of pioneers daring to take risks. The fight against disease is just as much a fight against old ideas and lack of imagination as it is against the disease itself. In the face of countless obstacles and failures, the only solution is to keep going forward. The 20th century has seen medical wonders that have prolonged human life. New technical and ethical questions arise as the field continues on its winding road, but it's a field that continues to bring hope to those in despair. Find out more in the next episode of 200 Years of Surgery.